You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. I'm happy to report that our presenting sponsor continues to be the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. If you are creating content, you need them. Call them and tell them I sent you. For this episode, I sat down with Jill Gilbert. She is the head of creative affairs at Luma Pictures. Now, Jill has had an amazingly interesting career coming up through development, animation, theme park development, and producing. She has credits that range from Disney animated titles to Grandma's Cats Are Trying to Kill Her and a Spongebob movie. This episode is full of good advice, interesting stories, and a career well built. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. And you can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. If you haven't already, check out the Kiss My Age show, which is where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about anything and everything, all the things that matter. It's hosted by Losta Drakovic, Karen Samuelson, and me. We laugh, we cry, we learn stuff. Okay, here's my conversation with Jill Gilbert. Have a listen. What do you do?
So I have a new title, which I should tell you.
Let's hear it.
It's Head of Creative Affairs for Luma Pictures. And the reason we changed it is so that it could encompass both live action and animation, because it became confusing to say, I'm head of animated content, but I also work on live action stuff.
So it's Head of Creative
Affairs.
That's a pretty fancy title, lady.
I guess so.
Okay, so let's talk about that current job first.
Okay, so what I do is that I am building a content slate for Luma Pictures. Luma is a visual effects studio that does service work for all the major studios on lots of the big blockbusters like Marvel movies, and working on Warner Brothers movies and Disney movies and Sony movies. But at the same time, we want to grow our own original content business. So I'm building a slate of projects that are both live action and animation. I'm hiring the talent who's going to work on those projects, writers and directors, looking for producers. I manage our creative team, which is great, and then move the projects through the process.
Fantastic. What types of projects are you going to do?
They're all feature films at the moment. We will expand into episodic at some point in time, but right now that's the business model that we know best. And the films are different than the ones that we service. We're really looking for films that are highly imaginative and emotionally provocative, films that can really take advantage of our big black box of visual effects and animation that we can make that maybe wouldn't have the budget to try to do otherwise. So they're films like an Ex Machina or Arrival or Pan's Labyrinth, more thought-provoking, more cerebral kinds of stories, but that need that visual spectacle in order to be brought to life.
Exciting. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. How did you get in this business in the first place?
How did I get into this business in the first place? That's
Don't leave anything out.
Long story. There's a lot of details there. So I came out from Chicago to California for college. I went to Scripps, which is a women's college, part of the Claremont colleges. And while I was at college in my, freshman year, my theater professor, I was taking a theater analysis class, she said, my sister works at a casting company and she's looking for interns. Anyone interested? And I thought,
yes,
that sounds amazing. Yes, sign me up. So I worked for a semester as an intern at a casting company, and that was great, but I realized I really miss the stories. I want to know, where do the stories get made? And they told me, you have to go work in development. So from there, I went and did an internship for Dawn Steele's company.
Oh.
Yeah. Dawn Steele is the first woman to run a major studio. She ran Columbia in the late 80s. And this was her production company at Disney in the early 1990s, 1991, 92. And she produced Cool Runnings for Disney. So this was during that time.
Fantastic. So were you living at college and commuting?
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
At that time, you could drive from Claremont to Burbank in 35 minutes. You can't do that anymore.
It's much further away now.
It's much further away now. So I did that for a semester, and then I went to work for Joel Silver's company at Warner Brothers as an intern in development, and then I worked for Donner Schuler Donner Productions, also as an intern. And then I graduated, and I got a job working at Baltimore Pictures when Barry Levinson was partnered with Mark Johnson, and I was an assistant to a producer there, a woman, and worked in development. I worked with her on set on the movie A Little Princess, which was great. And I got to see Alfonso Cuarón work with storyboards, which was very exciting. I'd never seen anyone work with storyboards. I had this vision, when you go on a movie set, you just, the director says, and action, and they just
it
shoot
just happens.
stuff. It just happens. But he plotted it all out with storyboards, and I thought that was very interesting, and that would become important later on. From there, I went to work at Fox 2000 when Laura Ziskin started that division, and it was quite exciting to be a part of a new studio division that was really building from the ground up. When we started
in development?
In development, and then also when we got things into production.
Yeah.
But it was neat to be able to see scripts start to appear on shelves because we had nothing on day one.
Yeah.
And we really had to figure out who we wanted to be as a division and what kinds of films we wanted to make. I'm not sure we ever got that right. We were supposed to be the character-driven division of Fox. Anyway, that was a great experience to sort of see how a studio operates.
Yeah. Now, when you started that job, did you already have the relationships with agents and managers to be able to get all the material, or did you have to build those relationships when you were there?
I didn't have the direct relationships, but I had relationships with assistants because I was still working for a vice president as his assistant. Mm-hmm. And he allowed me a lot of access to writers and getting to work with writers on their scripts, which was great.
Great.
Yeah. Which is not every assistant gets that opportunity. So
yes, but that's the thing that helps you become an executive yourself.
that is exactly what gives you the experience to become an executive yourself.
Okay, so let's talk about that transition.
So then it was time to look for an executive job, and I called my former boss from Baltimore Pictures, and she said, I think you should go into animation. I think you would really like the artistic integrity of animation. I think that you would like the people, and I think that you would like that there isn't as much of the Hollywood garbage that goes on in animation. And she's right, there's a little less of that in animation. So I went to interview with her.
Now, hold on.
Yes.
When she said that to you, how did that land on you?
It made me feel, it was very interesting. I hadn't thought about animation before, and I thought, she knows me really well. She knows what I like and what I don't like. And I'm not a big fan of the Hollywood, can I snap my fingers on this? The Hollywood slick thing. Hey!
Yeah.
That's not my jam. So animation seemed like it was a good place for me to be.
Yeah.
So she, at that time, was running development for Warner Brothers Feature Animation, and they were doing Space Jam and Quest for Camelot, not a great movie, and Iron Giant. So they were building their division, and they needed a junior executive. So I went and I interviewed, and she ended up offering me the job, and then they rescinded the offer a week after I got it.
Why?
Because of the merger with Turner and Time Warner.
Had you given notice?
I had.
Then what happened?
So I had to call my boss on his vacation in the Caribbean and explain what happened. And he had already hired someone. And he said, he said, we're going to tell her that what's happened and you can stay on as long as you want. This guy was one of the menchiest guys in Hollywood.
I'll say.
Sandy Isaac.
Wow.
Menchie guy. Yep. So he let me come back so I could continue my job search and keep working for him. That's very rare.
Knowing that you were going to leave.
Knowing that I was going to leave.
That is really menchie.
Very menchie. I'm very grateful to him. He was a good guy.
That's amazing.
And that bought me about 6 more months.
Do you know who had the job, who didn't get it?
I don't know what happened to her. Yes, I hired her. I mean, I found her for him. And he called her and told her.
Oh, man.
And I think, she was upset, but I think she understood. It really shows a true character, his decision to keep me on. Wow. So, very, very fortunate. So then I spent the next 6 months continuing to look for jobs, and I really focused in on animation. And I met a woman at Disney Toon Studios on an informational interview where she started off calling me the wrong name and ignoring me for the first 10 minutes. And I was able to turn the experience around, the meeting around.
Okay, let's talk about that. So you're in there for the interview, and she's what, on her phone or on her computer? What's she doing?
She brought in another executive and started talking to her about ER, the show.
So she's having a meeting?
She's having a meeting with me, but she didn't really want to talk to me, I think. And so she to sort of get out of talking to me, she brought in this other executive, and they began talking about ER and George Clooney.
Was it their show?
It was kind of their show.
Okay.
But they weren't working on it. It was just they were fans.
Oh, seriously?
Seriously, they were just fans.
They're just chit-chatting?
They were just chit-chatting.
While you're sitting there?
While I'm sitting there on a very low sofa.
Okay, so how do you insert yourself into that conversation?
That's a good question. Well, I was fortunate in that at Fox, I worked on the movie One Fine Day, which was George Clooney's sort of mainstream film debut. Mm-hmm. And I was in charge of the dailies. And we had this issue with him where on ER, he did the smolder, sort of the head down, eyebrows up, and that looks really bad on the big screen. So I would have to go through the dailies and give a little report on when his head was down and when his head was up.
Oh, how funny.
So I was able to tell that story and jump into this conversation and tell that story. And I got their attention. And the woman who was the boss, who was the head of the division, asked me the same questions you're asking me. How did you get your start? And fortunately, she had worked at Don Steele's company. She came after I was there. So I said, I got my start at Don Steele's company. And that allowed us to open the door to really have a productive conversation about my experience and what it was that I wanted to do. And pretty much by the end of the meeting, she offered me a job, which I didn't even know there was one to offer. And it was an entry-level junior executive position.
So this is an informational meeting.
Yes.
That went very well. Because she figured out you were her people.
Yes. Once I got into the conversation, she did.
Did anyone ever give George that note? I wonder.
I don't know.
George, if you're listening, look up.
Look up, buddy.
Bring your chin up. Okay, so you went to work for her.
So I went to work at Disney Toon Studios for this woman. And Disney Toons was the group that did all of the brand extensions. So sequels, sneakquels, prequels, interquels, any kind of quels.
What's a sneakquel?
A sneakquel is like what happened before the original movie. Like what happened before Lion King happened.
Okay, so all the direct-to-video.
Yes.
All the stuff my kids watched
all the
that
stuff
I did
your
not
kids
sit down
watched.
with them to
That's
watch.
right. That you're like, thank God for the babysitter. Yes. Yes. On DVD and videotapes. And we also did Winnie the Pooh movies and Mickey Mouse movies. Oh. So it was all, how can we further extend the Disney brand, but do it for a price?
Yeah.
And it was interesting over the course of 9 years that I was there to see how, when we started, it was very derivative, the material, the projects. But as we went on, we had to get more clever because when you're working on Aladdin 4, which never got released, by the way, you have to be smart about the kinds of stories you want to tell to maintain that engagement with your audience.
Yeah, and by Aladdin 4, Robin Williams isn't doing it anymore, is he?
It never went into production because we couldn't figure out a story that would have been suitable.
Because enough already with the Aladdin.
I know. Well, that's what can happen with a lot of these films, is it can get to be enough already. So how do you come up with something that's clever? So, for example, I worked on the movie Lion King 1.5. I don't know if your kids ever saw it.
Oh, that is ringing a bell. Yeah.
So many people say that Lion King is like Hamlet, and this was like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead with Timon and Pumbaa, where they're weaving in and out of the original movie, but they have their own story, but you see what happened.
Oh, that's really cute.
Yes.
So. I mean, if it was up to me, you could make as many Winnie the Pooh movies as you ever wanted.
Well, good. Well, we were planning to. They were good. They were good movies. We were a very profitable division for what we were spending. Very profitable. It was a really great experience to learn to understand the Disney brand and to understand animation and how do you make it for a cost but not sacrifice the integrity of what you're trying to do that ties in with this huge brand that is, I think, one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world.
Oh, I think Disney is the best training ground in the world for anything. If you're going to do it the right way.
That's the place to do it. The way that they work with their consumer products and the theme parks and all the synergy that goes on. They have a department, I don't know if they still do, but they did, called Synergy.
Yeah, did they make up that word?
They did.
Because it is everywhere, but that's the first place I heard it. They're not dum-dums.
No, they're not. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But it's It's brilliant how it works. I've never seen another company work that way. Nickelodeon came close with their consumer products pipeline, but not to the same scale.
It is amazing. And I remember the first day of Disney orientation where they show you that film of here's Disney's footprint. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize they own the world.
They do. They own the world.
Yeah.
And for years, they own the world. They own your life experience from when you're a child to then when you become a parent to when you're a grandparent. No other company is able to do that.
It's amazing.
Yes, it's pretty special.
This is why all our girls want to be princesses when they're 4.
I know.
Even if you resist.
Even if you resist.
Resistance is futile. All right, so you were there for 9 years.
Yes.
And then what happened?
So I had moved up the ladder. I got promoted several times, but after 9 years, there were 2 things that happened. First, I was not going to be made head of the creative group because there was someone in that position. But probably more importantly, by that time, my boss, who was the same person who hired me, we had a difference of opinion. Her opinion was executives should be the writers, directors, producers, creators of the films. And I believe that's why you hire the writers, directors, producers, creators of the films, and the executives are there to manage them.
Yeah.
And we were never going to get around that difference.
That's a pretty big difference.
That's a very big difference. And so it was time to go.
So where'd you go?
So I took a little bit of time off, and I decided I wanted to start my own little thing. So I started collecting projects to shop around, all animation. All creator driven. I had some series, I had some features, but it's also hard to get projects going. It's a really long haul. So I launched a pitch coaching business. Yeah. So because when I was at Disney, they were very specific about how we had to pitch and present. And I had to teach a lot of people. I had to learn, and then I had to teach a lot of people how to do that. And I realized I was good at teaching people how to pitch and present themselves and created a business out of that.
Smart.
It was fun. It was really fun.
So you're doing that to support yourself while you were developing the things?
Yes. However, that was still hard. That's a luxury item, if you will, for people. It's something that many people need, but it's hard to make that financial sacrifice.
To get people to pay for it?
Yes, to get people to pay for it. That was the truth.
Yeah.
But because I was hired by someone, they led me to an opportunity that I would have never envisioned would have happened. And what that was is I was hired to coach an executive producer who was working on Universal Studios Singapore, which is a theme park that was being built. And this executive producer had to pitch to Jeffrey Katzenberg, and he had half an hour to pitch a third of this park to Jeffrey. And Jeffrey is a real no-nonsense kind of person. He doesn't waste a lot of time, and this executive producer talks all over the place. He's kind of a mess.
You got to be efficient.
You have to be efficient. So I came in and I organized him, and I said, this is what you need to say, and this is why you need to say it, and this is how you need to say it. And he went and he had a good meeting, and he called me up and said, I could use someone like you on my team. And I said, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about theme parks. And he said, well, you obviously pick up things quickly, and you understand media, and you've dealt with brands, and I'll teach you everything else. So I became a theme park producer for almost 3 years.
You just never know where something's going to lead.
You never know. And I give Steve Ryan a lot of credit for seeing that I had tools in my tool belt that could be utilized as part of his team to move his project forward.
Yeah, that's really smart.
It was very smart. It was a huge learning curve to understand how do you tell a story in a physical space and maintain that same brand identity and integrity when you have a lot of physical limitation.
So were you producing rides?
Yes, and some media that went in the ride. So I produced a carousel and a roller coaster and a Ferris wheel. I produced, I think there were 62 figures that go in the food and beverage and merchandise outlets. So when you're in the store and you see the Kung Fu Panda figurine, all that has to be produced.
Oh, okay.
And then we had a big boat ride that was all about Madagascar, the movie Madagascar.
So you couldn't just take Universal Studios and plop it in Singapore?
So it works in 2 ways. Universal can decide that they want to build a park, but for this park, a company called Resorts World licensed all of the IP from Universal. And the reason that they did that is because they won a bid from the Singaporean government to build a casino on this island. But in addition to having this casino, they had to have hotels and shopping and museums and a theme park. So our goal to get this theme park built was in service of getting the casino open, because that casino would make $1 million a day in revenue.
As would the theme park.
The casino makes more.
Okay, so were you going back and forth to Singapore?
I actually didn't go back and forth to Singapore. There was a team, the bulk of our team did relocate over there, but because I have children, I couldn't do that. Plus, I was working very closely with DreamWorks, the DreamWorks folks, and if they were having a panic attack or needed to speak to someone, in our time zone, they needed to be able to reach someone, and that was me.
Amazing.
Yes.
So that was a 3-year project.
That was a 3-year project, which was a lot of fun and very exciting. But then I decided, since I'm the breadwinner in my household, I needed something that was more stable, and I wanted to go back into working for a company. So I ended up getting a job at Technicolor, which has an animation division, as their VP of Business Development, which is essentially sales and client management, which I'd never really done before. But
that hasn't stopped you so far.
That hasn't stopped me. They say you're supposed to know 70% of a new job that you go into, and that 30% is the learning curve. And for that one, I knew about 30% of the job.
Well, good for you for putting yourself forward, because typically women wait till they have 115% of the job before going for it.
Right? Well, these were good people who also could see the potential, and I think what I brought to the table with my relationships and my experience. So what was terrific about this job was I really got to see how a vendor operates. So this is a service provider. Technicolor does work for Nickelodeon on their television series, for DreamWorks on their extra animation pieces like for commercials and such. Lots of work for game companies. And so it was my job to find work and bring it in and then manage the clients. So not creative at all. But it was informative to be able to understand how a vendor operates and what they're thinking about and their perspective, because it's very different from the creative side, which is let's tell a great story, which is lovely, but there's the business piece to it and also the how are we going to make it piece.
Right, and it gives you such a good purview over what everybody's doing.
That's right.
And who all the players are.
That's right, it does. So that was a great job and wonderful people, really, really good people, and kind of a crash course in the financial piece of running a business, which I don't know much about, but they sent me to a Finance for Dummies class, which was great.
Nice.
Yes. So, but after about 16 months, there was an opportunity that came up that I couldn't pass up, and that was to go to Paramount. Paramount was launching its animation division. And the man who was doing that was my former big boss from Disney. And he called and said, I'm going to build this thing and I want you to come and be a part of it. And
okay. Like how long did that decision take you?
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It was a challenging job, for sure. It's always challenging when you're building something new. It was difficult because the man who brought me in ended up resigning after 4 months.
Oh.
Yes. Yes, it was not a match with him and the studio. That studio works very differently than Disney.
Did they bring someone else in, or did they bump you up?
No, they didn't bump me up either. My little group ended up reporting straight to the president of all of Paramount.
And who was that at the time?
Adam Goodman.
Okay.
So it was a little crazy right when we started, and no one at Paramount had done animation except for me and one of my colleagues, and my colleague had not done creative or development. So fortunately for me, I was given the Spongebob movie, which was the first film out of the group. And I was able to use that to educate all the other Paramount executives on why we do things the way we do them in animation, and to get our first movie going. And
now, is that a supportive experience, environment, or was it like pushing a boulder up a hill to get people on board with that?
Well, fortunately, because Philippe Dumont the CEO of Viacom at the time had said that he wanted this film, everyone knew we had to make it. But
So that's some incentive.
That was some incentive. He named the date by when it had to be ready. So I was able to wave that flag.
Pressure applied.
Pressure applied. So that was good.
Yeah.
It was challenging, though, because animation is very different than live action, and Paramount runs more in a traditional live action way. There's a lot of attention to star power and big names and fancy credits, and animation isn't really that. So there were challenges, but to Adam Goodman's credit, he did a very good job of being open with the process of how we wanted to make this film. And also our filmmakers were good about being open to accommodate the things that were important to Adam in terms of pushing the cinematic nature of this film so that it didn't turn out to be another television episode.
Right, just a really long
long television episode, which is what the first movie was, which was a great movie, but we needed to step it up. And I think the result was pretty good.
Yeah, and did it do well?
It did very well. It was one of the most successful, I think it was the second most successful film of Paramount of 2015, which is when it came out.
Well done.
Yes.
So then did you do more there?
I did more development, but after 2.5 years, it was really hard not having a solid leader and a real vision for what it was that we were trying to do. So in the time before I needed to sign a new contract, which is what they wanted me to do, I went and touched base with close mentors and friends to get their advice on what should I do next?
Yeah.
What's the next adventure? And one of those people was the COO of a company called PsyOp, which is an animation company that produces commercials, very high-end commercials. And
High-end animated commercials?
high-end animated commercials for big brands like Coke and Nike and Microsoft and AT&T, very high-end Clash of Clans commercials, really good commercials. And they wanted to evolve their business from service to being content creators. And so they brought me in to do that, to do films and other short content. So to take the talent and the pipeline that they had and to use it to make our own content.
How did that go?
It went pretty well. I sold a series to Awesomeness TV called Grandma's Cats Are Trying to Kill Her.
A classic.
A classic. They're still trying to kill her. I think they're in season 3 now. And that was a way to kind of get us going. And there really wasn't a lot of financial incentive there, but you have to start somewhere. And on the other end of the spectrum, I sold a movie to Sony Pictures Animation, which really sort of embraces what PsyOp does best in terms of world creation. I had another movie that had 3 offers on the table, including one from Fox. But ultimately, the COO who brought me in and the CEO were at odds with the 5 founders who were directors, who were creators. The creators, wanted to continue the path of creating content, and the CEO and the COO were really mostly interested in revenue now.
Which would be more commercials.
Which is more commercials.
Yeah. Did the Sony movie get made?
It did not. The director who I brought on, he had done a bunch of Clash of Clans commercials, he was moved over to direct animated Ghostbusters. So that kind of sidelined the project.
Yeah.
And that was frustrating. So I did what I do when I can get frustrated, is I go and seek out counsel with people that I trust. And so I reached out to a friend who had previously worked at PsyOp and who knew the CEO and COO wanted to get his advice on how to navigate the situation and how could I try to make this business work, knowing what their objectives were and what my objectives were. And as I was telling him about building this content business, he said, we need you to come do that for us here at Luma Pictures. So I said, okay.
Your path is speaking so much to finding your tribe.
Yes.
And having that support system. Because every time you need to make a decision, you're calling up your tribe to get advice, and every single time it led to a new job.
It did. I'd say that the only job I ever got from applying that I applied for was my very first job when I sent the resumes. I sent out 50 resumes. This was in the days of snail mail.
Yeah.
50 resumes to production companies that I liked, and I sent it to a woman at Baltimore Pictures who was not the woman that ended up hiring me. But otherwise, every single job that I've gotten has been because I knew someone and because I reached out to ask advice, to get different perspectives, to just brainstorm with people about what should I be doing next.
Let this be a lesson to all of us. This is how you do it.
I think that this is really the way of the world going forward. People want to work with people that they like and trust, people that are referred to them by other people. Mm-hmm. It's not just about the credentials. And that if you have, again, these tools in your tool belt, if you are a problem solver, if you know how to work with others, if you're a team player, if you have vision, if you can be a leader, you can take those tools and work in any situation.
That's the thing, because it's not about having the specific skills for that specific job.
Yes.
Can you figure it out once you get there, and do you have all the other skills to help make it work?
That's right.
Smart.
There are definitely jobs that are more specific for specialists, whether it's artistic or...
If you're going to be a visual effects artist...
Yes, then you need to know...
You need that skill.
You need that skill. But if you're trying to be a producer but I'd say even if you're a director, and if you start low and if you're trying to find your way, as long as you have those same kinds of skills, you can grow and evolve if you're in the right environment and with the right culture.
Well, and the business is changing every second anyway, so it's impossible to know everything ever.
It's true.
Do you even now feel like you know everything about your job?
No. There's tons to learn.
Yeah.
There's lots to continue to learn, especially on the live action side, because I haven't done that for many, many, many years.
Have you found that it's really changed a lot?
I can't tell yet because we haven't gotten into production. So far, not much, but I can't
movies
tell.
Are still movies.
Movies are still movies. There's a lot more technology. And
a lot more compliance on the production side.
Yes, a lot more of that. But then there's also there are scrappier ways people can do things. People make movies on iPhones. So it's just ever evolving. I think it's about trying to find the best ways, whether they be old or new, and try to utilize those methodologies.
Smart. Okay, so that brings us to Luma.
Yes.
Luma with an M, not with an N.
Yes.
All right, so tell me this. Well, first, let's talk about you specifically being a woman in this business. Have you noticed any differences or obstacles that you had to overcome because you're a woman? Did you have to adjust how you presented yourself or spoke or any of that?
I'd say there's two things. I'd say first there was an obstacle when I became a mother. I was fortunate at the time when my children were little. I was working for a woman who was a mother. However, she had more resources available to her in terms of childcare, and so it was a constant juggle of trying to navigate balancing your kids' needs and getting your kids to doctor's appointments and such while still trying to do your job. And this was a while back where people didn't always have access to you. So whereas now, if you can be anywhere and people can reach you and you can make up the work later or hop back on the computer at night. So that was a bit of an obstacle at first. However, in a weird way, because of the way my life is organized. So I'm divorced and I have my children half time, 50% of the time. And so on the nights that my children are with me, I try to be home for them because I know on the other nights I can work crazy. I can do whatever it is that I need to do.
I am familiar with this work model.
You're familiar with this model.
Yes. I remember working till 11 o'clock at night when I don't have my kids and then going home when I have my kids.
That's right.
But if you set that expectation with people,
yes,
it works.
It generally works. I think it generally works.
I mean, the Emmys is not going to reschedule for your custody schedule, but most things can be worked around.
Most things can be worked around. And then, some of it is just life, in terms of doctors aren't going to have an appointment on Sunday. You're going to have to go at 10 o'clock on a Thursday. That's just the way it is. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and I don't know if this is true of being a woman or not, but I found that in a room, I need to know what kind of voice do I want to have in that room? Again, whether it be men or women. And I noticed that there's many people, whether they be men or women, like to try to speak up and get their words in there because they want to be heard or they want to show off for the boss or whatever it is. And so I have decided to it's not that I don't speak, but I like to take everything in and listen to the different points of view and then share my thoughts. And I found that in many ways has more impact because it gives me a chance to really think about what it is that I want to say while having considered all the other discussion points. And I saw that the way that I learned that was watching Dick Cook do that at Disney. And I was really impressed. And his words, they really resonated with me with whatever it was he was saying because of that strategy.
That's a really powerful position.
It is a pretty powerful position.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Well, it has worked. It has worked pretty well for me, I have to say.
So you wait.
Wait.
And then by the time you speak, it's very informed.
Yes.
Smart.
A lot of people have to get out what they need to say because they just need to get it out for whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But
they need to make the point first.
They need to make the point first. They need to impress. They're anxious. They're not organized in their thinking. So this is a way it helps me just hold for a moment. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to speak, but just to take it all in so that my words can be impactful.
Let's all just take that in for a minute. No, that's really good. Do you ever have trouble then getting your word in? Or you're at a position now where people are going to wait and wait for you to speak?
Yes.
That's the best. That's the best. The meeting doesn't start until Jill arrives. Right. Okay, so then from a bigger perspective, what do you make of what has happened with women in the last year, in the last week? We're recording this, I think, on Kavanaugh's first day on the Supreme Court.
Oh, my.
What do you make of it all?
That's such a big question.
Yeah, could you answer it in 2 sentences?
Oh, I don't know exactly what to make of it. I think that I think that it's going to take some time to really think about it and to try to come up with suggestions, solutions, ways in which we can bond together, work together, support each other before, rather than trying to rush out and try to make change. Or I think we really need to take a beat and look at the landscape and then look at what has been successful, if anything has been successful, what has not been successful, and then try to figure out a way forward. That's a very broad answer.
Yeah, well, it does feel like the great unveiling right now. It's layer after layer after layer of, oh,
Yes.
that too.
Oh, that too.
Okay.
It does. Mm-hmm. It's weird. I'm reading The Handmaid's Tale right now.
Feels oddly relevant.
Oddly relevant. But I think it is. I think there's a lot of truths. There's a lot of people's opinions and feelings. And you can't alter how people feel. People feel the way they feel, no matter where they sit or who they are.
Yeah.
So I try to think about, well, how can we understand why they feel that way so that then maybe we can come to the table to have a discussion. I think feelings and emotions, they run high on all sides.
Yeah, they do.
All sides. And we can't have logical and productive discussions when those fires are being fanned.
When everyone's hot.
When everyone's hot.
Well, that brings up an interesting point for me. I've been seeing there's a lot of dismissal of feelings.
Yes.
And can we just deal with the facts and all these feelings are not productive and just dismissing them completely, which I don't think you can do.
No.
I think what you're saying is you have to listen to the feelings and why do people feel that way before you can even start to solve the problem.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean I have to agree with the feelings, but I have to understand the feelings so that I can understand how you sit at the table and
right.
how you're coming to this discussion. Because if I'm ignoring that, then we're never going to get through. We're never going to come to any resolution. Our feelings are just going to continue to grow and grow and grow.
And the feelings are not irrelevant.
They're not. They're important. People feel the way they feel. They're important. However they came to them, however they got them, whatever they may be.
I wonder if this is a particularly feminine perspective in honoring the feelings to get to resolution.
That's a good question.
I don't know. My son would say that was a very sexist thing to say. I don't know if it is or not, but it's different from what I'm seeing in the national dialogue.
It is. It's something. So my son is in college. He just started. He's very interested in politics, and I've had this conversation with him. I said, I think, you need to. He has a lot of great things to say. I don't know if I agree with everything that he has to say, but I understand where he's trying to come from. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing that he is missing is understanding, having the patience to listen to where people are coming from. Because in order for him to say what he needs to say and for people to hear it, he needs to know what their perspective is.
Well, you have to meet people where they are.
You have to meet people where they are.
And I always think if I equate it to, like, if you're really, I don't remember if I've said this on a podcast before or not. I tend to repeat myself all the time. say you're not feeling well and someone in your family dismisses you, then you have to work really hard at feeling sicker and showing them how sick you are and expressing how sick you are so that they will acknowledge it so that you can move forward. Where if someone just said, I'm so sorry you're not feeling well, how can we help you feel better? Then you don't have to fight for it and you can move forward. Right. I think that applies to everything.
I think so too.
Just acknowledge people where they are so you can go from there.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for young women just starting out?
I have several pieces of advice, but I'll stick to three big ones. So the first is to really identify your network and to build that network. So who are the people around you that you have currently, and then how can you build that network? Because your contact sheet is your most important tool in this business. I'm probably in any business. It's about the people that you know, and there's all different ways you can meet people and build those connections and stay in contact, even when you're not looking for a job, which I think is really important. I don't care for it when people just reach out when they need a job.
It's not the best.
It's not the best.
Sincere connection.
But you have to take care of that contact sheet and nurture it and grow it so that it's ever evolving and you can reach back for whoever it is that you need to speak with. People may be reaching out to you as well. So I'd say that's the first thing. The second thing is be open to opportunities that present themselves. Because you just never know what that opportunity might become.
So say yes.
Say yes.
To the theme park in Singapore.
That's right.
You never know.
You never know where things can lead. And I understand that as one goes on in their career and they have more responsibilities and they need to maybe earn more money, or there are things that you can't maybe say yes to. So I understand.
You can't really start over at the bottom.
You can't start over
with an entry-level salary once you have a house.
That's right. For example. Yes, exactly. Unless you found treasure in your backyard, then you could do that.
Treasure. Buried treasure.
Buried treasure. But I think, saying yes and being open to the opportunities, and if one opportunity isn't the right opportunity, then see if there is another way to that opportunity or another path through that opportunity. And then the third thing is, I think, just being true to who you are and what it is that you want to do with your career. It doesn't mean that you might not change course a little bit, but I think that people respond to authenticity and that kind of connection with people and their soul, that we're not just cogs in a wheel. And so you need to, and as time goes on, you figure out more and more about who you are and what it is that you want, but being true to that.
And you don't have to play that, Hollywood game.
You don't have to do this.
I got to tell you, I know so many more people who are not that than are that.
I know. I think it's kind of, that was sort of our generation, not like we're old people or anything, but I think that that era has really, that's kind of moved on. That's kind of old school.
Yeah. There's so much more of a genuine desire to tell stories and build empathy and reflect our world. Feels like.
I think that's so true.
Let's hope.
But I think it has to be, because the dynamics in our industry have changed. We are not the ones that control what is going on in our business. It's the audience that controls. The audience decides if they watch, what they watch, when they watch, how they watch, why they watch, if they make their own to watch. And it's not the networks and the studios saying, you will watch this show at 8 o'clock on Thursday nights, and that's the only time you're going to get to see it.
Because there are 3 channels.
There are 3 channels, and that's it. Oh my goodness, you remember those days.
Yeah.
So if you want to connect with your audience, you have to do it in a real way, because they're the ones making the choice now.
Yeah, changes everything.
Changes everything. But it's exciting.
Yeah. Okay, now there's another project you're working on called Brick.
Brick.
Tell us about it.
It's called Brick. BRIC. Break, reinvent, implement, change. And what it is an initiative to find and nurture young, diverse talent. Our industry is a tough one to break into, and many times you also need to have special skills that can be expensive. Many times diverse families, don't see a career path forward into our business. But the truth is we need storytellers from all different backgrounds and experiences, because our world is so much more diverse, as we were just talking about. And we need stories that our audiences can connect with. But how do we find that talent and nurture it? How do we solve the problem rather than just throwing together a diversity program at a studio and paying for something for a few years that fizzles out? What can we really do?
Create a real pipeline.
Create a real pipeline and a real support system. So I'm co-hosting a summit in February 9th of next year, where we're going to be discussing all of these topics. I have 2 partners. And in the meantime, we're doing a grassroots initiative of our own. We've built a create-a-thon, which is essentially a hackathon to create content over the course of a weekend with high school students. So the first one will be in a month, in November, and it's going to focus on animation since that's my area of expertise. And we are getting 12 students from a USC charter school that focuses on the arts and media, who will come for the weekend, 2 days, to build an animatic, which is a little story reel. Mm-hmm. They have to build a 30 to 60 second story reel, and the topic is worst lunchroom ever. And they will have mentors to guide them, and there will be a prize for the best one, and a screening and a party.
How cool. Okay, how do people find this organization?
Our website will be going up shortly. That is the best way. And I will keep you posted on the summit because you should come.
Yes, please.
It's going to be really fun.
Okay, cool. So we'll link to that because by the time this goes up, that'll probably be ready.
Yes.
So go to my website, theother50%.com, and you can link to all of Jill's things.
Great.
What have we not talked about that we should have talked about?
I guess I love mentoring young women and up-and-comers, but if anyone is ever interested in talking about that, I still do a lot of pitch coaching, and tied in with the pitch coaching is kind of self-development for career coaching, and I'm always happy to talk to people about that.
How can people find you?
They can email me at Luma Pictures. So my email is Jill, Jill, at Luma Pictures, Luma Pictures, Pictures.com.
Okay, be careful what you wish for.
I know. Bring it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Jill Gilbert for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms. And also, go subscribe to the Kiss My Age show. Thanks for listening, and Happy New Year. Thanks for listening, and Happy New Year.